And we are back with Annie Koutrakis, who's a member of parliament for Vimy, Quebec, and who, as we mentioned earlier, is on 17 parliamentary and interparliamentary groups, as well as a member of two important committees, the COVID-19 committee and, of course, the Standing Committee on Finance. Annie, thanks again for joining us. We're an internet radio show, so we can't take live calls unless, of course, as we saw earlier, my son interrupted the Zoom call. But what we have done is that we've spoken to some members of our...
It was such a great interruption. He is... yeah.
It was mostly, Daddy, get off the phone. Daddy, where are you?
Aww.
But we spoke to certain members of our community, the business community, and they do have three questions for you. And I'm hoping you'll be able to give some insight if you can. The first question that came up was, will Canada be moving to a paperless money system?
That's an excellent question. And I know that the Bank of Canada is looking into it. In fact, if you go on their website, they've got this article that they call The Road to Digital Money. And I know that research is underway at the Bank of Canada because exploring the idea of a central bank digital currency makes sense. In theory, it could provide the safety of cash with the convenience of modern electronic payments. It could take many forms. But there's a lot of concerns as well. But that's not to say that it shouldn't be explored. And I'm happy to see that, the Bank of Canada is doing that. They're looking to see if they can allow payments to remain private to parties involved. It could be just like cash, traceable to law enforcement, just like bank accounts. But there's also a worry, I guess, and you have to think of all sides. Just like, when we take actual cash and we put it under our mattress, when times are not going so well, just like in 2008, a lot of people, it was, they said, oh my God, we're going to take our money out of our banks because we're afraid and we're just going to put it under a mat. Well, that doesn't help the economy at all. No. So it could be that this could be facilitated as well. But I think given where we are technologically and given how, 1 out of 3 people, I know myself, I hardly have cash on me when I go shopping. I use my debit card or I use my credit card. So it's natural to see how we could evolve in that way. It's just making sure that, whatever is put in place, it's very well thought out and done in a way that is not going to be to the detriment of our economy at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And we've also seen that putting cash under your mattress doesn't help your posture when you sleep.
No, very true.
In looking ahead, and the next question we have is, in looking ahead, what can we as Canadians expect? Like, we're seeing so much coming out of the COVID response. What can we expect from the next budget?
You know what? A lot of people are asking us, and especially, the opposition, like predominantly the Conservatives and some NDP on the Finance Committee members are saying, we need a fiscal update. We need the budget. When can we start talking about the budget? And, before all of this happened, we were in the pre-budget consultation period. We had heard from a lot of witnesses. We had given as a committee of finance, we had given our, not report, but our recommendations to the Minister of Finance and his staff, and then COVID. And as you know, it's a fluid situation. First and foremost, our government, we were not looking for perfection. We were looking to get money as quickly as possible into the hands of all Canadians who may not be as lucky as I am right today to be working from home and receive my paycheck and not be furloughed. So to be talking about the next budget, although a lot of work was already done, I'm not sure we could go back to those because now the new reality is something different. So every 2 weeks, we do have a report. The Minister of Finance comes to the Standing Committee of Finance and he does present the findings and where we're at every 2 weeks. Last week, we were lucky enough to have the outgoing Governor of Bank of Canada out. He gave us his outlook. We've got the PDO was there, Mr. Giroux. He explained to us, look, the truth is, economically, we've got a fantastic balance sheet before all of this. Canada is doing phenomenal. Interest rates are basically at 0, 1% or less. Yes, we're spending a lot of money, but I think that right now the importance is not to concentrate so much what the budget is going to look like, as to contain this virus, make sure that we're giving people the help that they need to see what we're going to do as the economy opens up. I don't have any concerns. And yes, obviously we have to make sure that the spending is controlled and we're not, spending money like, in quotation, drunken sailors. And I know that that's a great concern. But after listening to the parliamentary budget officer and listening to, Governor of Bank of Canada, Mr. Polos, and I asked those questions myself. I said, there are many people out there that are saying that we're not going to be able to afford this or that we're not doing the right things. And they both reassured not only me, but all Canadians on the committee that we're going to be just fine. And the economy is going to grow and we're going to get back to normal budgetary times. Now is just not the time. Okay. There's just too many unknowns right now.
And I think the biggest concern, we talked about this before recording, was, the new reality for employees, whether you mentioned it, whether you're furloughed or whether you've been permanently laid off. There's so much fear, anxiety, and stress.
A lot of uncertainty. We never had to deal, George, we've never, in our generation and several generations, we've never had to deal with something like this. Yeah. And, we're learning all the time. Our scientists are learning all the time. I mean, even, and the conspiracy theorists. I mean, social media is wonderful and it allows us to have so many different sources of news. But sometimes those sources of news and the little sound bites that they put out could be very dangerous.
Yeah, social media is great for what it was intended for, but, I agree. It's a whole different show on what it's become. You mentioned conspiracy theories, there are many theories out there that people have used and espoused that really don't make any sense, but, they're bought into it because for whatever reason, I think it's
because people are always looking for simplistic answers. Unfortunately, there are no simplistic answers. We're learning as we go along.
And I think there's the underlying tone as to why these conspiracy theories gain so much traction is people don't know what to believe anymore. And they're not sure where they should go for their proper news and where they should go. And that uncertainty, I mean, you couple uncertainty, you couple all these things together, you create a perfect storm. And here's where we are.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll go to our last question. And this one's important as well because it affects so many people. As we know, the global economy functioned by shipping manufacturing to low-cost nations, China being one of the largest contributors to that. Post-COVID, can this continue? Most importantly, what can be done to bring manufacturing back to Canada?
That's an excellent question, George, and thank you for asking me. One of the issues that I keep pushing, which ties into manufacturing and bringing some of it back to Canada, is throughout this COVID-19, we don't want to be at the mercy of other countries, whether we have the supplies that we need for our frontline workers, for our, our citizens, to be safe during this time. And what this has done is that it has opened up, conversations. Should we be bringing some of this manufacturing back? And I personally, Annie, and I can speak, I guess, a little bit as a Liberal member of Parliament. But personally, what I've been pushing a lot is the supply chain and the self-sufficiency on personal protective equipment and going further. We've got the capacity. The other day, GM announced we just announced that they're going to be producing 10 million masks in Canada. We've seen so many biopharmaceutical companies stepping up, saying that we're going to be producing our own vaccines here and where we're at. We've got technology. Manufacturing, I don't think, is going to look as it did when my parents immigrated to Canada. It's taken on a different. But I really believe that we have the capacity. We've got the knowledge, we've got the right formulas, we've got extreme high intelligent, artificial intelligence, if you will, that all ties into manufacturing. I think we should. And again, the reason I say I think we should is because you know, what if the United States decides, I mean, they tried to do it and then, you know, President Trump changed his mind where he says, you know, all protective equipment cannot go outside our borders. Yeah. Well, we could never be at the mercy, or, you know, China sending equipment to airplane loads, or you know, not being sufficient or meeting our standards. So I think these are lessons to be learned. I think that there is room to think about that. And I think that we are looking at that seriously. And I think you could tell by the programs that we're going through Minister Baines, or whether it's, you know, through procurement with Minister Anand. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of people that stepped up and said, hey, we've got the knowledge, we need to retool what is out there. So we're doing everything possible to make sure that we are going to be doing the right things for the right reasons and to bring some of that manufacturing back. That's not to say that we don't have to honor the treaties and the agreements that we have in place, because obviously we do. Because if we become protectionists, or if almost like isolation, everything for us, the consumer here in Canada, is going to be infinitely more expensive. So it's got to be measured and well balanced, but there's always room for improvement. And I think that there is, you know, as far as I'm concerned, I think we should bring some of it back.
And there also is the implication of CUSMA and how that affects manufacturing. We have Mexico as a partner, the U.S. as a partner, and the reality is, you've seen in the past where anything that is subsidized by the government is usually faces heavy tariffs with NAFTA and now CUSMA. So there's a lot that can be looked at. But, you know, the thought process around that question, I understand it, is Canadian jobs, Canadian manufacturing, and helping Canadians. And of course, if you can help CUSMA as well, that's a benefit as well.
Well, you know what? We're lucky because we have a highly educated population and becoming more and more, and we've got a lot of expertise. Like I said, manufacturing is not going to look like anything as we remember it to be. It's going to take a different format. And I think they're great jobs. They're high-paying jobs. You know, the world looks to Canada for expertise. I think we have a lot to share with them, and we should do so. And it's very important to remember that if we're living as well as we are in Canada, it's because of these obligations and the agreements that we have in place. And so we shouldn't forget that, you know, and it's not a simple thing as let's stop all manufacturing in Canada and bring it back to Canada. We don't want to pay our employees, you know, $5 an hour. We want to pay our employees, you know, $25 and $30 an hour and even more. So I think that, you know, we should work on that. We should continue in that vein and be proud of what we already do in Canada, and we should be exporting that, you know, expertise and our experience with the rest of the world. And I tell you, the rest of the world really holds Canada in high regard, and we should never lose sight of that.
Awesome. Annie, again, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. I know how busy your schedule is, and taking this time for us, you know, we spent an hour together talking about so many things. I always feel more at home whenever I speak to Montrealers. So thank you for that. That's a personal therapy for me as well. So thank you for everything. And I wish you continued health, continued success, and stay safe. And hopefully we'll be out of this soon, and I'm able to travel to Montreal, and we'll have coffee together.
I can't wait to see you in person, George. And maybe we'll be social distancing, but at least we'll be close enough to see each other in person. Thank you again for giving me the opportunity to share with you my thoughts.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, and enjoy.
Thank you.
Cheers. Bye-bye.